Hello, everyone. I hope that you are all okay. I hope you've had a lovely Christmas, some time to chill, spend time with your family and friends. Today, I'm going to be finishing Six of Crows for you all. So, we actually only have 2 chapters left. Let's get started. So, chapter 45. Van Eck's voice was calm, but an angry flush had crept up his neck. "Where is Kuei, your beau? Let us safely off this island with our payment, and I'll gladly tell you. You have no way out of this, Brecker. Your little crew is no match for my Grisha." Kaz shrugged. "Kill us, and you'll never find Kuei." Van Eck appeared to consider this. Then he stepped back. "Guards to me," he shouted. "Kill everyone but Brecker." Kaz knew the instant he made his mistake. They'd all known it might have come to this. He should have trusted his crew. His eyes should have stayed trained on Van Eck. Instead, in that moment of threat, when he should have thought only of the fight, he looked at Inej. And Van Eck saw it. He blew on his whistle. "Leave the others. Get the money and the girl." "Hold your ground," Kaz's instinct said. "Van Eck has the money. He is the key. Inej can fend for herself. She's a pawn, not the prize." But he was already turning, already sprinting to get her as the Grisha attacked. The Tidemakers reached for her first, vanishing into mist, then reappearing at her side. But only a fool would try to take Inej in close combat. The Tidemakers were fast, vanishing and reappearing, grabbing at her, but she was the wraith, and her knives found heart, throat, spleen. Blood spilled over the sand as the Tidemakers collapsed in 2 very solid heaps. Kaz caught movement from the other corner of his eye. A squalor hurtling towards Inej. "Jesper!" he shouted. Jesper fired, and the squalor plummeted to the earth. The next squalor was smarter. He came in low, gliding over the ruins. Jesper and Matthias opened fired, but they had to face the sun to shoot, and not even Jesper could aim blind. The squalor barreled into Inej and sped upwards with her into the sky. "Stay still," Kaz urged her silently, his pistol drawn. But she didn't. Her body spun, and she slashed out. The squalor's scream was distant. He released her. Inej fell, plunging towards the sand. Kaz ran towards her without logic or plan. A blur cut through his vision. A third squalor swooped down, snatching her up seconds before impact, and dealing her a vicious blow to the skull. Kaz saw Inej's body go limp. "Bring him down!" roared Matthias. "No!" shouted Kaz. "Shoot him and she falls too." The Grisha dodged up and out of range. Inej clutched in his arms. There was nothing they could do but stand there like fools and watch her shape get smaller in the sky. A distant moon, a fading star, then gone. Van Eck's guards and Grisha closed in, sweeping the Mercher and the trunk of the Kruger through the air onto the waiting brigantine. Vengeance for Geordie. All Kaz had worked for was slipping away. He didn't care. "You have 1 week to bring me the real Kuei," Van Eck shouted, "or they'll hear that girl's screams all the way back in Fergia. And if that still doesn't move you, I'll let it be known that you're harbouring the most valuable hostage in the world. Every gang, government, smuggler, and spy will be after you and the dregs. You'll have nowhere to hide." "Kaz, I can make the shot," said Jesper, rifle to his shoulder. "Van Eck is still in range. And all would be lost. Inej, the money, everything." "No," Kaz said. "Let them go." The sea was flat. No breeze blew, but Van Eck's remaining squalors filled the ship's sails with a driving wind. Kaz watched the brigantine surge across the water towards Ketterdam, to safety, to a fortress built on Van Eck's impeccable Mercher reputation. He felt as if he'd looking into the darkened windows of the house of Zelverstraat. Helpless once more, he'd prayed to the wrong god. Slowly Jesper lowered his rifle. Van Eck will send soldiers and Grisha to search for Kuei, said Matthias. He won't find him, or Nina. Not in this slat, or any other part of the barrel. Nowhere in Ketterdam. The previous night Kaz had ordered Specht to take Kuei and Nina from the Ferryland in the second longboat, the one he told Jesper he was repairing. They were safely stashed in the abandoned cages below the old prison tower at Hellgate. Kaz had made a few inquiries when he'd visited the harbour to contact Van Eck. After the disaster at the Hell Show, the cages had been flooded to purge them of beasts and bodies. They'd been empty ever since. Matthias hated the idea of letting Nina go anywhere without him, especially in her state, but Kaz had convinced him that keeping her and Kuei aboard the Ferryland would leave them exposed. Kaz marvelled at his own stupidity. Dumber than a pigeon, fresh off the boat and looking to make a fortune on East Stave. His greatest vulnerability had been right beside him, and now she's gone. Jesper was staring at Wylan, his eyes roving over the black hair and golden eyes. Why? He said at last. Why would you do this? Wylan shrugged. We needed leverage. That's Kaz's voice talking. I couldn't let you all walk into a hostage exchange, thinking I was some kind of insurance. Nina tailored you. The night we left Gelterm. That's why you disappeared during the journey, said Jesper. You weren't helping Matthias take care of Nina. You were hiding. I didn't hide. How many times was it you standing behind me on the deck at night when I thought it was Kuei? Every time. Nina might not be able to put you back, you know. Not without another dose of Perem. You could be stuck like this. Why does it matter? I don't know, Jesper said angrily. Maybe I liked your stupid face. He turned to Matthias. You knew. Wylan knew. Inej knew. Everyone but me. Ask me why, Jesper, Kaz said, his patience at an end. Jesper shifted uneasily on his feet. Why? You were the one who sold us out to Pekka Rollins. He thrust an accusatory finger at Jesper. You're the reason we were ambushed when we tried to leave Ketterdam. You almost got us all killed. I didn't tell Pekka Rollins anything. I never... You told one of the dime lions we were leaving Kirch. But that you'd be coming back into big money, didn't you? Jesper swallowed. I had to. They were leaning on me hard. My father's farm. I told you not to tell anyone you were leaving the country. I warned you to keep your mouth shut. I didn't have a choice. You had me locked up in Crow Club before you left. If you'd let me... Kaz turned on him. Let you what? Play a few hands of three-man bramble? Dig yourself deeper in with every boss in the barrel, stupid enough to extend you credit? You told a member of Peckin's gang you were about to be flush. I didn't know he'd go to Pekka, or that Pekka knew about Perem. I was just trying to buy myself some time. Saints, Jesper, you really haven't learned anything in the dregs, have you? You're still the same dumb farm boy who stepped off the boat. Jesper lunged for him, and Kaz felt a surge of giddy violence. Finally, a fight he could win. But Matthias stepped between them, holding them back with a massive hand. Stop this. Kaz didn't want to stop. He wanted to beat them all bloody and then brawl his way through the barrel. Matthias is right, said Wylan. We need to think about what's next. There is no next, Kaz snarled. Van Eck would see that. They couldn't go back to the slut or get help from Per Haskell, and the other dregs. Van Eck would be watching. Van Eck would be watching, waiting to pounce. He'd turn the barrel, Kaz's home, his little kingdom, into hostile territory. Jesper made a mistake, said Wylan. A stupid mistake. But he didn't set out to betray anyone. Kaz stalked away, trying to clear his head. He knew Jesper hadn't realised what he was setting in motion, but he also knew he could never really trust Jesper again. And maybe he'd kept him in the dark about Wylan because he wanted to punish him a little. In a few hours, when they'd failed to make contact, Speck would row out for them in the longboat. For now there was nothing but the flat grey of the sky and the dead rock of this miserable excuse for an island. And in Age's absence, Kaz wanted to hit someone. He wanted someone to hit him. He surveyed what remained of his crew. Rotty still hovered by the wreckage of the longboat. Jesper sat with elbows on knees, head in hands. Wyland beside him, wearing the face of a near stranger. Matthias stood gazing across the water in the direction of Hellgate like a stone sentinel. If Kaz was their leader, then Inej had been their lodestone, pulling them together when they seemed most likely to drift apart. Nina had disguised Kaz's crow and cup tattoo before they'd entered the ice court, but he hadn't let her near the R on his bicep. Now he touched his gloved fingers to where the sleeve of his coat covered that mark. Without meaning to, he'd let Kaz Rivendell return. He didn't know if it had begun with Inej's injury or that hideous ride in the prison wagon, but somehow he'd let it happen, and it had cost him dearly. That didn't mean he was going to let himself be bested by some thieving merch. Kaz looked south towards Ketterdam's harbours. The beginnings of an idea scratched at the back of his skull. An itch, the barest inkling. It wasn't a plan, but it might be the start of one. He could see the shape it would take: impossible, absurd, and requiring a serious chunk of cash. Scheming face, murmured Jesper. Definitely, agreed Wyland. Matthias folded his arms. Digging in your bag of tricks, Gemgin. Kaz flecked his fingers and gloves. How did you survive the barrel? When they took everything from you, you found a way to make something from nothing. I'm going to invent a new trick, Kaz said. One Van Eck will never forget. He turned to the others. If he could have gone after Inej alone, he would have, but not even he could pull that off. I'll need the right crew. Wyland got to his feet. For the Wraith? Jesper followed, still not meeting Kaz's eyes. For Inej, he said quietly. Matthias gave a single sharp nod. Inej had wanted Kaz to become someone else, a better person, a gentler thief. But that boy had no place here. That boy ended up starving in an alley. He ended up dead. That boy couldn't get her back. I'm going to get my money, Kaz vowed. And I'm going to get my girl. Inej could never be his. Not really. But he would find a way to give her the freedom he'd promised her so long ago. Dirty hands had come to see the rough work done. Chapter 46. Pekka. Pekka Rollins tucked a wad of Gerda into his cheek and leaned back in his chair to survey the raggedy crew Doherty had brought into his office. Rollins lived above the Emerald Palace in a grand suite of rooms, every inch of them covered in gilt and green velvet. He loved flash, in his clothes, his friends, and his women. The kids standing before him were the opposite of anything properly stylish. They wore the costumes of the comedy brute, but no one got access to his office without showing his face, so the mask had come off. He recognised some of them. He'd hoped to recruit the heart-trender Nina Zennik at some point, but now she looked as if she might not last the month, all jutting bones, dark hollows, and trembling hands. Seemed he'd dodged a bad investment there. She leaned against a giant virgin with a shaved head and grim blue eyes. He was huge, probably former military, good muscle to have around. Where did Kazbrecker find these people? The boy next to them was Shu, but he looked far too young to be the scientist they'd all been so desperate to find. Besides, Brecker would never bring such a prize to the Emerald Palace. And then, of course, Rollins knew Jesper Fahey. The sharpshooter had run up an astonishing amount of debt at nearly every gambling den on East Stave. His loose talk had put Rollins wise to the knowledge that Brecker was sending a team to Ferger. A little digging and a lot of bribes had yielded the where and when of their departure. Intelligence that had proved faulty. Brecker had been one step ahead of him and the Dime Lions. The little canal rat had managed to make it to the ice court after all. It was a good thing, too. If not for Kaz Brecker, Rollins would still be sitting in a cell in that damned prison, waiting for another round of torture, or maybe looking down from a pike at the top of the ring wall. When Brecker picked the lock on his prison cell door, Rollins hadn't known if he was about to be rescued or assassinated. He'd heard plenty about Kaz Brecker since he'd risen to prominence in the dregs. That sorry outfit Per Haskell called a gang, and he'd seen around the barrel a few times. The boy had come from nowhere and been a slew of trouble since, but he was still just a lieutenant, not a general, a terrier nipping at Rollins' ankles. "Hello, Brecker," Rollins had said. "Come to gloat?" "Not exactly. You know me." Rollins had shrugged. "Sure. You're the little skiv who keeps stealing my customers." The look that passed over the boy's face then had taken Rollins aback. It was hatred. Pure, black, long, simmering. What have I ever done to this little pissant? But in seconds the look was gone, and Rollins wondered if he'd managed it altogether. "What do you want, Brecker?" The boy had stood there, something bleak and mad in his gaze. "I want to do you a favour." Rollins noted Becker's bare feet in prison clothes, the hands shorn of his legendary black gloves, a ridiculous affectation. "You don't look like you're in a good position to do any favours, kid." "I'm going to leave this door unlocked. You're not stupid enough to go after Boyolbea without a crew to back you. Wait for your moment and get out." "Why the hell would you help me? You weren't meant to die here." Somehow it sounded like a curse. "I owe you, Brecker," Rollins had said, as the boy exited his cell, hardly believing his luck. Brecker had glanced back at him, his dark eyes like caverns. "Don't worry, Rollins. You'll pay." And apparently the boy had come to collect. He stood in the middle of Rollins' opulent office looking like a dark bolt of ink, his face grim, his hands resting on the crow-handled walking stick. Rollins wasn't surprised to see him. Exactly. Word had it they had exchanged between Brecker and Van Eck had gone sour, and that Van Eck had eyes on the slat and the rest of Kaz Brecker's haunts. But Van Eck wasn't watching the Emerald Palace. He had no reason to. Rollins wasn't even sure the merch knew he'd made it back from Fergia alive. When Brecker finished explaining the bare bones of the situation, Rollins shrugged and said, "You got double-crossed. You want my advice? Give Kauai to Van Eck and be done with it." "I'm not here for advice. The merch is like the taxes we pay. They let the occasional bank heist or housebreak slide, but they expect us to stay here in the barrel and leave them to their business. You go to war with Van Eck and all that changes. Van Eck's gone rogue. If the Merchant Council knew, and who's going to tell them? A canal rat from the worst slum in the barrel? Don't kid yourself, Brecker. Cut your losses and live to fight another day." "I fight every day. You're telling me you just walk away? Look, you want to shoot yourself in the foot? The good foot? I'm happy to watch you do it. But I'm not going to ally with you. Not against a merch. No one will. You're not courting a little gang war, Brecker. You'll have the Stad Watch, the Kirch Army, and its navy arrayed against you. They'll burn the slat to the ground with the old man in it, and they'll take the Fifth Harbour back too. I don't expect you to fight beside me, Rollins. Then what do you want? It's yours, within reason." "I need to get a message to the Ravkan capital, fast." Rollins shrugged. "Easy enough." "And I need money." "Shocking. How much?" 200,000 krug. Rollins nearly choked on his laughter. "Anything else, Brecker? The Landstov Emerald? A dragon who craps rainbows?" "You have the money to spare, Rollins, and I saved your life." "Then you should have negotiated back in that cell. I'm not a bank, Brecker, and even if I were, given your current situation, I'd say you're pretty poor credit risk." "I don't want a loan." "You want me to give you 200,000 krug? And what do I get for this generous gesture?" Brecker's jaw set. "My shares in the Crown Club and Fifth Harbour." Rollins sat up straighter. "You'd sell your stake?" "Yes, and for another 100,000 I'll throw in an original decapple." Rollins leaned back and pressed his fingers together. It's not enough, you know, not to go to war with the Merchant Council. It is for this crew. This crew? Rollins said with a snort. I can't believe you sorry lot were the ones to successfully raid the Ice Court. Believe it. Vanek is going to put you in the ground. Others have tried. Somehow I keep coming back from the dead. I respect your drive, kid, and I understand. You want your money. You want the wraith back. You want a bit of Vanek's hide. No, said Brecker, his voice part a rasp, part growl. When I come for Vanek, I won't just take what's mine. I'll carve his life hollow. I'll burn his name from the ledger. There will be nothing left. Pekka Rollins couldn't count the threats he'd heard, the men he'd killed, or the men he'd seen die, but the look in Brecker's eyes still sent a chill slithering up his spine. Some wrathful thing in this boy was begging to get loose, and Rollins didn't want to be around when it slipped its leash. Open the safe, Doherty. Rollins doled out the cash to Brecker, then had him write out a transfer order for his shares in the Crow Club and the gold mine that was Fifth Harbour. When he held out his hand to shake on the deal, Brecker's grip was knuckle-crushing. You don't remember me at all, do you? The boy asked. Should I? Not just yet. That black thing flickered behind Brecker's eyes. The deal is the deal, said Rollins, eager to be done with the strange lot. The deal is the deal. When they'd gone, Rollins peered through the big glass window that looked over the gambling floor of the Emerald Palace. An unexpectedly profitable end to the day, Doherty. Doherty grunted in agreement, surveying the action taking place at the tables below. Dice, cards, Macca's wheel, fortunes won and lost, and a delicious slice of it all came to Rollins. What's with those gloves he wears? The bruiser asked. A bit of theatre, I suspect. Who knows? Who cares? Rollins watched Brecker and his crew moving through the crowded gambling hall. They opened the doors to the street, and for a brief moment they were silhouetted against the lamplight in their masks and capes. A cripple trailed by a bunch of kids in costumes. Some gang. Brecker was a wily thief and tough enough. Pekka supposed inventive too. But unlike those poor stooges at the Ice Court, Vanek would be ready for Brecker. The boy was going into a real battle. He didn't stand a chance. Rollins reached for his watch. It had to be about time for the dealers to change shifts, and he liked to supervise them himself. Son of a bitch, he exclaimed a second later. What is it, boss? Rollins held up his watch chain. A turnip was hanging from the fob where his diamond-studded timepiece should have been. That little bastard. Then a thought came to him. He reached for his wallet. It was gone. So was his tie-pin, the Kalish coin pendant he wore for luck, and the gold buckles on his shoes. Rollins wondered if he should check the fillings in his teeth. He picked your pocket? Doherty asked incredulously. No one got one over on Pekka Rollins. No one dared. But Brecker had, and Rollins wondered if it was just the beginning. Doherty said, I think we best say a prayer for Jan Van Eyck. You think Brecker can best him? It's a long shot, but if he's not careful, I think that Murch might walk himself right into the gallows and let Brecker tighten the noose. Rollins sighed. We better hope Van Eyck kills that boy. Why? Because otherwise I'll have to. Rollins straightened the knot of his pinless tie and headed down to the casino floor. The problem of Kaz Brecker could wait to be solved another day. Right now there was money to be made. And that is the end of Six of Crows. So I hope that you all enjoyed that as much as I did. Very interesting book. I hope you all have a lovely new year. But in the meantime, if you want to listen to another book, Rachel is reading The Hobbit. So that sounds really good. I will see you all soon. Bye.